Welcome to The Victory Show.
Hey Victors, welcome to this episode of The Victory Show. If this is the first time you're joining us, I'm Rachel League with Bestseller by Design. Our founder, Travis Cody, is the best-selling author of 16 books, and we've had the privilege of helping hundreds of business consultants, founders, and entrepreneurs write and publish their own best-selling books as well. Through that journey, we've discovered a fascinating pattern. Most businesses really struggle to break past the seven-figure revenue mark. On this show, I sit down with some of the world's most successful CEOs, leaders, and business owners to uncover the strategies they used to scale way past that mark so you can do the same. So get ready for some deep insights and actionable takeaways that you can implement in your life and business starting now. Today's guest is Paul Berndt, an accomplished entrepreneur, technical strategist, and IT veteran with over 3 decades of experience helping organizations navigate the ever-evolving world of technology. Paul is the founder of NetV Pro, where he serves as a trusted technical reference and consultant to major customers across the United States. Through NetV Pro, he helps clients develop cost-effective strategies for storage, virtualization, and security, focusing on VMware, SAN solutions, backup and data lifecycle management, and recovery planning. Earlier in his career, Paul held leadership and engineering roles at companies where he led infrastructure and transformations and implemented secure, scalable systems. He also serves as the Tallahassee co-leader of VMUG, helping grow a community of professionals passionate about virtualization and enterprise IT. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Rachel.
You've spent over 3 decades in IT. Tell us what first drew you to this field and what's kept you curious all these years?
What drew me to the field was just the random nature of the IT industry. I don't mean by random, but I mean by is it really intrigued me in it was ever changing, ever evolving. There was always something new and just interesting happening. So, I got my degree in electronics, and I always told people, I was like, I understand computers at the base level because it's just ones and zeros. So that's how I got started.
And as you've moved through and seen all of the evolution in technology, is it the newness of the industry? Is it, that original love for the ones and zeros and really understanding it at a foundational level? What has kept you interested all these years?
Yeah, I mean, it's a constant learning. I get bored with repetitive nature, but I really get intrigued by what's coming out, what's going on, and how technology can help people. I always said it's just a tool to help people to make more successful. And nothing more nowadays is exactly that. Information is AI. AI is another game changer, but it's just another tool to make us more successful. Less, people are talking about the dumbing down of our industry or society, I should say. Our industry is always excelling because we're the ones that are trying to keep everything running for everybody else. So it's a constantly learning, and I just love that, and using the technology that's coming out.
So tell us about the early days of NetV Pro. What was the gap that you were trying to fill for your clients? What inspired foundation? What were you doing right before?
So the big gap that I filled when I started NetV Pro was the whole white glove disaster recovery as a service, because I was installing compellent SANs across the nation, and every customer that I installed it with either said, most of the time they said, we're going to buy a second unit and set up replication. And I heard it over and over. But, after a few years, people weren't doing that. So I'm like, sounds like there's a service here that needs to be filled. So that's how I started NetV Pro as a disaster recovery as a service company before it even was a term that people are using. I just didn't know what it was. I just knew there was a need, and that's how I started it.
Give us an example of what a potential client might face and why they would hire you.
The biggest thing is repetitive. I just told you I don't like repetitive, but it is part of it is like that 1,000 hour, that 10,000 hours of expertise that you get by doing something over and over, or very focused on that solution. So that's what they get. A lot of companies, they have a couple IT people, they're doing, 15 different things. They have no time to become the actual expert in disaster recovery and business continuity that companies need. So it really makes a lot of sense to hire us to come in, implement the solution for them, and just hand over the keys so then they can continue on doing the work and know that their data is backed up, recoverable. We do DR as a service. We do disaster recovery testing, and nobody does disaster recovery testing because they're like, they barely have time to keep the systems up and running that they have. It's like, hey, who wants to run a scenario of like, hey, what happens? Everything's gone. Do we have time to do that test? No, we don't have time for that. We have these other projects, other things. So it's just prioritization and time in the business. To me, it makes a lot of sense. And to a lot of our customers, obviously it does too, because, they are coming to us for solutions.
Right. It sounds like they're coming to you when the disaster has already hit. So it feels like a nice to have until it becomes an acute need to have. And then there you are to help solve that problem. Are there any industries in particular that you focus on?
Yeah. We really like the manufacturers because they're really focused on their business of building products, and getting just in time service,
Yep.
and so we're there to make sure the technology behind their business is up and running, and the continuous improvement that we can provide, and security, because nowadays everything's connected but everything's accessible. So now you have people that want the technology that you have, the personal, I want to say personal identifiable information, that's part of it. But the industry secrets that your company is providing, so that way your business can continue. So you have to keep your stuff private. And everybody's like, well, put it in the cloud, put it in the cloud. It's a click away. We put a lot of stuff in the cloud. So we're called smart about the solution. But it's like, hey, we don't want to expose your information to any unwanted people. And we set up security around that.
What did your career path look like leading up to founding NetV Pro that gave you the expertise that people seek out?
So yeah, I worked for either a vendor or a customer on the enterprise level. What I mean by that is GE, Kimberly Clark, these Fortune 500 type companies that are huge, and that way I could dive in deep and be very specific about my knowledge, especially in storage or VMware or just that particular time. I was able to focus on getting certifications in Microsoft, getting certifications in VMware, trying to be, being that expert for these Fortune 500 companies.
Makes sense. And as you've continued to build and grow your team, tell me a little bit what that looked like. What did you start with and what does it look like today?
So obviously I started with myself, but I knew that part of being a real company is offloading and getting people that are much better than things that I'm at. So initially, I got payroll off my job list. It was like getting rid of the hats as fast as I could. Help desk, level 1 type support services, somebody that could be repetitive and patient, much more patient than I am. So, that's one of the early hires. And from there, it was how do we evangelize NetV Pro and get the word out? So, I hired a chief explainer and he was able to get the word out about NetV Pro and grow the business. And a lot of businesses struggle at that level of trying to, when do we get that chief explainer that's not the business owner?
How did you find the talent that you needed to fill out the areas that you identified that maybe weren't natural strengths of the pre-existing team?
So the good news is I was a natural networker and I hold on to people like back in the day, we had Rolodexes, I never had a Rolodex, but it was always LinkedIn. So I would just connect with people on LinkedIn and stay connected with them. And then when opportunity arose in that area, I already had people in my Rolodex ready to go that I wanted to bring on.
And what were you able to share with them that convinced them that this new venture that you had launched was the right next step in their career? Because it sounds like getting the right people on your team early was critical to being able to scale.
Yeah. I mean, some were pizza and a beer, sitting down with them and just connecting with them as a human. and letting them know like, hey, this is where we're going. This is where we want to be in 5 or 10 years. Giving them the road plan for them and for the company, so there's room for them to grow. So it's early on, we've always been a business that people seek us out and want to work for us, which is a really cool thing to have.
That's awesome. Yeah, sales and persuasion and people skills are, I think, an overlooked component of the founder journey. You don't have to necessarily be the chief sales officer, chief marketing officer, but the ability to bring people around you, to get people on your side, on your team in any capacity, I think is a really important part to setting the foundation. So once you had that initial team, what was the next step in scaling the business?
So my next step actually was part of my journey to become my first branch of, we grew the business to, like you said, the $1 million mark, where people a lot of times stagnate, and we did. But then I relocated to Florida. My business is based out of Minnesota, actually. So we always say we're nationwide as long as it's in Minnesota or Florida. And from there, I've been able to double the business because I relocated myself to a new territory and regrew the business. And having my chief explainer be able to hold down the storefront back in Minnesota is a huge plus to have.
Have you grown your team beyond that, or is it systems that you put in place that are very scalable? I mean, do you think of this more as a tech business or a people business that helps people with their tech?
Yeah, it's always been a people business that helps people with their tech. I mean, all of us technical people love technology, but we know at the end of the day, it's about the people that use it and need it.
Have you ever hit a bump in the road in trying to scale your business, and how did you overcome that?
We've had several bumps in the road. I mean, you can pick one. I mean, I think a lot of people had issues with COVID. We were ready for it, but not ready. And what I mean by that is we were already working from home, most of us. So we really didn't have an issue. And a lot of our customers were used to us, being remote and doing 95% of our work remotely. That part was, we were ready, we were built. There was no, hey, get us up and running remotely now. We didn't have a big influx like that. But what we did have, because like I said, we were a people business, we didn't have any any way of getting new customers, because we were always focused on having events, having people come to our office, just educating and being in front of people. That created, a lull of, really a lull, really, and it was rough. We quickly pivoted to online Zoom meetings, things like that, to educate as many people as we could, and it seems to be working. The good news is people are starting to come back and starting to want to be off of Zoom and being real, and if it's valuable to them, they will show up. But if it's not valuable, they're not going to show up. And that's really what it comes down to, is you got to bring the value. And we've always focused, the business core values, one of them is bring value to our customers.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that process of articulating value to your potential customers, because like you described earlier, it sounds like it feels to them like maybe more of a nice to have, something that's not a top priority until it becomes an acute need. And so how do you convince them to bring you on before something bad happens? Or do you find yourself mostly doing the after issue recovery damage?
Yeah, we don't actually do a lot of after issue recovery damage, because if you don't have your data backed up, you should, let's hope you have good insurance, and can submit a claim. But that doesn't help your customers. We're constantly trying to educate people, going, okay, insurance is just not enough, because people are a click away from going to a new provider, provide their solutions. And once they're gone, they're gone. They're not going to come back to you. You lose reputation. So yes, trying to explain value to people is extremely difficult, without a doubt. But storytelling is one way to do it. We tell them a story and what really happens is when it hits close to home. If you're in let's pick the latest one. One of our vendors actually got hit, Ingram Micro. Their payment process is down. They can't accept payments. So, it's like you think about it, it's like they are a middleman. Their job is to accept payments and get product out to us as customers, and being down, they're losing customers and they're going to lose long-term revenue, not just short-term. So it's unfortunate, but like I said, it doesn't hit home to the customer, to the person, until it hits close enough to them going, shit, that could have been me. And that's when people will start going, okay, what's the value that we're bringing? Because we're trying to be ahead of that and keep them away from that oh shit moment.
Right, right. And to be able to continue to serve your ever-growing portfolio of customers, what has the growth of your own internal team look like?
Like I said, we have been traditionally sought after by applicants to come work for us. Many times, we look at growing people from within. So we bring them on right on from college, technical school, wherever. We bring them on as interns. We show them the ropes. We show them what we do, and then they go back to school, or they graduate, and then it's a two-way street. They a lot of times decide, hey, I like the culture and I like the work that I did for NetV Pro. I'm going to come work for you guys, or vice versa. You go, hey, you were awesome. We're going to bring you on and keep you and grow you, and until you find your next opportunity that you feel that fits best for you. It's rare that we bring on a senior level person that's been somewhere else, because it just doesn't work for us. It's really, what I mean? It's like one of those, like, we like to bring them on and grow them from within.
Right. It sounds like you have a winning playbook. And so teaching that early, as opposed to having others come in with pre-existing habits, is part of the key to your success, getting everybody on the same page with your ethos and strategies. When you look back over your career,
which accomplishments most meaningful? Yeah, I mean, I think, I'm really close to where I was hoping to be in 15 years. So I guess the biggest accomplishment is, I always think that the growth isn't fast enough for me. But when I turn around and look back at the growth and look back at where we're at, and I'm like, oh, this is awesome. This is great. So I think, biggest accomplishment is, getting, like you said, that core team together. And we've been together for, I don't know, more than 10 years. You know what I mean? It was like, okay, so now what is the next thing that we want to accomplish? And it's just like, that's what we're after. And that's what AI is all about to me, is really taking us to the next level, because it is here to stay, and people that leverage it are going to get them, grow the most.
Yeah, it sounds like keeping your eyes on the horizon, looking forward, is part of the key of your scaling success, and that you are aware of the newest technologies available, and also thinking what comes next. And that's enabled you to continue to build to this huge portfolio. And like you said, then when you do take a second to pause and look back, you're able to see everything that you've built, but not dwelling on the past, more just trying to continue to move forward. Has your definition of victory changed over the years for you?
Yeah, it has. It has changed. When I got into this, obviously one of it is I was seeing a lot of my customers when I was at Compellent making a lot of money. So I exited the reseller and became my own partner, thinking I was gonna, get a big pocket of gold, big pail of gold, because that's what I was seeing was happening. But right when that happened, things transitioned and things changed. So I had to pivot like day one, and it was crazy. The good news is, I just listened to customers, and then they gave me my business plan for me. But yes, I was hoping for like a ton of revenue. But honestly, now my goal is to spend, how do you say, when we put life balance, is like, okay, I work for my family, and that's really what it is. And I'm happy where I'm at with the income I'm making. This is really the goal, and I'm happy.
That's great to hear. If you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Yeah, and I actually knew this, but it's like one of those things where you kind of keep forgetting. is nobody cares. What I mean by that is nobody cares about what my journey is. Nobody cares, it's like, but they care about how I can help them. And if you focus on helping them, then they will in turn help you. So it's that relearning, like, hey, don't try and tell somebody all about yourself. Find out how you can help them, and then the rest will just fall in place.
An act of service. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, Paul, thank you so much for your time today. It was a fantastic conversation. Really enjoyed having you on the show.
Oh, thank you, Rachel. This was fantastic.